I think we can all agree that Sergio Perez has not quite had the best of seasons this year, and well, it's just not been that good. Perez, of course, has struggled deeply with qualifying issues, race performance issues, and just being able to extract performance out of the Red Bull. Now, of course, it's a huge shame to see him like this, but something needs to change, and he needs to find his A game before he could potentially lose his Red Bull seat. So, in this video, I'm just going to go through a deep dive into how he needs to try to save his seat and also whether or not this is his last chance to prove himself here at Red Bull. And if not, then he could very well potentially be gone, just like what happened to Ricardo and other people who previously raced in Red Bull. So let's get into it. So these were the results from the 2024 US Grand Prix. And as you can see, Perez was 59 seconds off Leclerc in the end. Now he started from 12th or 9th and he finished behind George Russell. What's even more embarrassing is that Verstappen, who was in the same car, was 19 seconds behind Leclerc. It just shows that Perez just had a pretty poor weekend and he wasn't able to extract the amount of performance as Verstappen did. Now, this is the Drivers' Championship, and as you can see, Verstappen is currently at 354 points, which is just really good considering how bad Red Bull has been in the second part of this season. Now, if you scroll down a bit, you can obviously see Perez is all the way down in 8th in the Red Bull, which is very, very confusing, and considering that he had probably the same car in the first half is kind of confusing. If he was able to extract that same performance but in the first half, he would potentially be able to be up there in like 3rd or 4th or maybe even higher. Who knows? Now, of course, he didn't do that, and he's all the way down 8th behind both Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren, which is really costing him and Red Bull. What's also costing Red Bull is in the Constructors' Championship, and as you can see, Red Bull are now 40 points behind McLaren, and this is obviously after the US Grand Prix. So as you can see, they have slipped behind McLaren. Now, they were leading for most of the season up until around the Singapore Grand Prix when they were passed. And part of the reason was because Sergio Perez just wasn't putting in the results he needed to. It's a shame because Perez has showed glimpses of performance throughout the season. However, he's just not been able to get it together and put in a clean weekend or a good performance during the race, which is just really costing him and Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. They could potentially be overtaken by Ferrari soon. Now, of course, Perez, his slump kind of really started around 2023, and I think we can all agree that around the halfway point is when he really started to struggle for some reason. Now, we're not really sure. I'm not really sure what happened, but I'm guessing it could have been because of the car. Maybe it wasn't suited to him. Who knows? But of course, he really struggled. And of course, he was all the way back down and he started to struggle in qualifying performance and in race performance. So it was a huge deal, of course. And everyone was wondering whether he would lose his seat or maybe even lose his whole F1 career and that he would end up retiring from that season onwards. But Red Bull decided to keep him for that season, as they thought it was maybe just a small slump at the end of the season. However, once we got into this year, things just really changed. Perez had a good first few rounds, and he had some pretty consistent performance and all. However, his midway point just kind of dropped off, of course. He started crashing, he started having poor qualifying performances and poor race performances. He's not been able to extract the results that Red Bull wanted to. And now that Lawson has managed to score in the points from 19th or so, it's very, very concerning to Perez and potentially could be risk factor and damage limitation from here on out. So he really needs to. During the summer break, he was under huge threat of losing his seat. However, Red Bull decided to keep him. However, some people thought that maybe he would stay on until the Mexican Grand Prix, until after the Mexican Grand Prix, as it provided street tracks and circuits that Perez was usually good at. However, he's not really done as good as he has in the past few years at those circuits that we went to this year. So it's now getting very concerning, and well, who knows? the Mexican Grand Prix could be his last, or maybe another race for him. Who knows? In terms of, well, this upcoming weekend, what he needs to do is really put in a good qualifying performance and race performance, and I think then he'll be able to stay for the next few rounds. And for the rest of the season, he just needs to do a really consistent job. If I were him, I would try to probably aim for the top 3 or maybe even go for wins if he has the pace. Always try to get in the qualifying positions and good race performance, and also maintain good strategy, as that is also very important. Overall, that's what I think about Perez, and it could be very well his last chance to prove himself in Formula 1. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and, well, goodbye. Let's see how he will do in the 2024 Mexican Grand Prix.